Alright, so today I want to introduce you to the Super Glow Ball Python. It's a pretty rare combination of genes, and I can almost guarantee that you've never heard of the Super Glow. I actually went over to Morphmarket.com where they have almost 250,000 ball pythons over there, which is pretty incredible. And out of all those snakes, they've only ever had 3 Super Glows listed over there. And the last Super Glow that was sold over on Morphmarket actually sold 2 years ago. So for the last 2 years, no one has ever produced a Super Glow and listed it over on Morphmarket, which is pretty amazing. And the Super Glow consists of the Ghost and the Super Stripe. It's essentially a 4-gene combination because keep in mind the Ghost is a recessive mutation where you need 2 copies of the Ghost for a visual, and the Super Stripe consists of the Yellow Belly and the Spectre. So today I want to jump over to the internet and I want to show you how to make a Super Glow and some of the combinations that have been made using the Super Glow working in other genes into this combination. Alright, so I'm going to jump over here on Morphmarket.com and I want to show you the individual genes and how they come together to make up the Super Glow. And the first one I want to show you is this snake right here. This is actually either a yellow belly or a spectre, and this is where things get a little bit complicated. This looks pretty much like a normal ball python. And kind of the challenging part about this project, especially if with the Super Glow, if you actually took the Super Glow and you bred it to something else, everything would come out 100% het ghost with one copy of the Ghost, and you can't see just one copy of the Ghost, and then everything would either be yellow belly or spectre. Half the offspring would be yellow belly, half would be spectre. And the problem is you can't tell the difference between the yellow belly and the spectre. They would all look like this, and they would all pretty much look like normal ball pythons, really close to normal. And sometimes it takes a really keen eye to figure out the difference between a yellow belly or a normal or anything in the yellow belly complex. So this is kind of similar with anything in the yellow belly complex. So you actually have the yellow belly, the spectre. You also have, for example, you actually have the asphalts and the gravels with the freeways and the highways. And let me tell you, if you actually make some of these combinations, you can make some really spectacular combinations, but when you start breeding it into other things, you get all these normal looking snakes and you don't know what they are, you know, if it's a yellow belly or a spectre. And a lot of times you're kind of taking a chance over here buying one of these snakes because you don't know. A lot of times the yellow bellies are a lot less expensive than some of your other genes. So you're really taking a chance on if you're getting one or the other, especially if you're buying them for a breeding project and you work them together. So for example, if you actually bought 2 of these and bred them together, potentially you could get the super yellow belly, which is a completely white snake. So it really depends on what you're shooting for as far as which genes you're buying into. So take a look at this. If you're trying to figure out if you have a gene in the yellow belly complex, if you have the yellow belly, the spectre, the gravel, the asphalt, the spark, any of those genes, a lot of times you can tell the difference between those genes and a normal ball python if you flip the snake over and take a look at the belly. And I'd say it kind of takes a keen eye to on some of these. Some of them, yeah, you can almost hardly tell they're in the yellow belly complex. This one's pretty obvious because a lot of times you'll actually see almost like, kind of like het pied markers. You know, with a het pied, with one copy of the pied, I'd say maybe about 10% of the time, maybe 20% of the time, you'll actually see het pied markers, which looks like someone took a Sharpie and drew lines on either side of the belly, really strong lines. And with the yellow belly, it's a little bit different. You can almost see kind of the lines on the other side, either side of the belly, but a lot of times they're kind of broken up and pixelated, almost like a checkered kind of a border on either side of the belly. That's a pretty sure indication that you have a gene in the yellow belly complex. And in this case, this is actually either a yellow belly or a gravel. So, you know, you actually take some of these combinations, breed them to something else, and you're not sure exactly what you have, but you know for sure you have either one gene or the other. So if you actually take the spectre and you breed it to the yellow belly, they come together to form this amazing snake. Take a look at this. This is a super stripe. These super stripes are absolutely beautiful. And they call them the super stripe, I'm pretty sure, because it's one of the combinations that has probably the strongest, thickest stripe right down the back. It's like the super-sized stripe on the back of the ball python. And let me tell you, when you start working other genes into some of these yellow belly combinations, you can make some of the most spectacular ball pythons in all of ball pythons. It's pretty amazing what you can actually make working other genes into these combinations. So here is the ghost. In order to get the super glow, you take the super stripe and you work in the ghost. So the ghost is actually a recessive mutation. You need 2 copies of the ghost for visual, and the ghost can really vary from one example of the ghost to the other. I've actually seen some that are really orange, some of them that are really bright yellow, and some of them kind of like this where they look kind of like a normal ball python that's kind of washed out, giving you almost like a creamy color as far as the ghost. Probably one of my favorite combinations working ghost into any other genes is taking ghost and working it into some really dark genes like the super blackhead or some really super dark ball pythons. And what you end up with is you end up with a steel gray ball python, which is pretty amazing. You get some really intense gray colored snakes like that even don't look real. It's pretty amazing what you can do working ghost into some of the dark genes. So here is another version of the ghost. So this is one version of the ghost. I actually pulled up another one here. This is the orange ghost, and look at how different the versions of the ghost can be from one version to the other. As a matter of fact, there's quite a few minor versions of ghosts. There's actually a green ghost and a butterscotch ghost, and some of them are compatible and some of them are not compatible. So I'd say pretty much on average, if you actually took an orange ghost and you bred it to just a regular ghost, you'll end up with a visual ghost looking snake. But I've actually heard in some reptile forums, some guy actually picked up an orange ghost and bred it to his ghost, and come to find out they weren't compatible. He actually produced normal looking snakes that were het for orange ghost and het for ghost, 2 incompatible lines of ghost. And sometimes you'll run into that problem, especially if you get some of these really weird kind of the minor ghosts, like if you picked up like a butterscotch ghost and you tried to breed it into all your other ghosts. Sometimes it's compatible and sometimes it's not, depending on which version of the ghost that you actually have. So here's what happens if you take ghost and you work it into the super stripe. This is what you get. You get the super glow. And I actually found just 3 super glows over here, and all of them had other genes in the mix. This one's actually has pastel in with the super glow. And it's kind of interesting on this one. Essentially what it is, it's like a super stripe that's really kind of faded out a little bit and it turns kind of yellow when you add the ghost. It's kind of an interesting effect adding ghost to the super stripe. I can't say I've really ever seen anything quite like it. It's a pretty amazing combination. It looks like it has a little bit of paradoxing right up here. And the pastel, I'm thinking the pastel maybe brings in a little bit more of the yellow in this combination. And if you actually look really close on this one, a lot of times with your the yellow belly complex combination, sometimes you'll actually get some purples, kind of this lavender purple coming out as they're hatchlings, and sometimes they'll actually lose that as they age and mature. So this one is a hatchling. I actually pulled it up over here. This is 100 grams, pretty much right out of the egg at 100 grams. This probably had a few meals. I actually pulled up another one over here. Take a look at this. This is the exact same combination with the pastel, the ghost, and the super stripe. So this is a pastel super glow, and take a look at what this looks like as an adult. It's pretty amazing how it really kind of fades it out with the ghost and completely transforms the super stripe, which is pretty amazing. So this one actually weighs 900 grams and it's a female, pretty much I'd say a sub-adult, pretty close to being adult. Usually like a breeding size female would be like 1500 grams. But it's kind of interesting how it kind of completely transforms the color of the super stripe by adding the ghost. So there was one more combination over here with the super glow where they actually added spider to the super glow. I thought it was a pretty interesting combination. And if you're familiar with the spider, essentially what it is, it has this kind of an interesting spider web pattern down the back of the snake. And a lot of times if you work spider into a lot of other combinations, a lot of times that spider pattern is really visually dominant, meaning you'll actually see that spider web pattern in a lot of your combinations. But when you actually mix it with the super glow, take a look at what happens to the super glow when you work in Spider. It completely shatters the pattern and you get this crazy jumbled up pattern where you, as a matter of fact, if someone handed me the snake, I had no clue that there was actually Spider in the mix because it shatters the Spider pattern so much. And it almost reminds me of some of the other combinations that you can add Spider to. So for example, if you actually take the freeways or the highways, the other yellow belly complex combinations, and add Spider to those, you get kind of a similar effect where it really shatters the Spider into a completely shattered pattern where it completely gets away from the spider web pattern. And you kind of see the same thing with, for example, you can actually use the Disco Infernos kind of shatter the spider pattern, and the Vanilla Creams also do the same thing. It's kind of interesting how they all really just kind of shatter the pattern of the spider. So there's one more I wanted to show you over here. This is a little bit confusing. I actually found this over on the World of Ball Pythons, and this is a super glow fly. I couldn't believe this is over here because it's like, all right, so for the super glow, you would expect the super glow to be the combination of the super stripe and the ghost, and then usually the fly is the combination of the fire and the pastel. So you would think this would be like a fire pastel super glow, but I actually came down and looked at the genes all the way down on the bottom here. Take a look at the genes in this one. This is actually the fire, the ghost, and the super pastel. So this doesn't have any genes in the yellow belly complex. Has nothing to do with the super glows that we've been talking about, which is kind of interesting. They kind of use the same kind of a slang name, the super glow fly, which can get a little bit confusing. That's a pretty amazing combination, but it's pretty interesting to see what the super glow can do working other genes into the mix. And the thing I find the most amazing about the super glow is that nobody's really produced any and listed them over here on Morphmarket, which is pretty amazing. All right, so it is time for the question of the day. And Erica Youngberg asks, if you bred a sterling het axanthic to an axanthic, would you be able to tell the difference? And that is a very good question. So essentially what a sterling is a combination of the cinnamon and the super pastel. And sometimes the sterlings can look almost exactly like an axanthic. They can be completely black and white and silver, which is pretty amazing, depending on what version of cinnamon and what version of pastel that comes together to make the sterling. And if you actually bred a sterling het axanthic to an axanthic, which is a recessive mutation, as a matter of fact, in order to reproduce the sterling, you'd actually have to breed it to an axanthic pastel, because keep in mind, the super pastel, if you breed it to something else, everything's going to be past just one copy of the pastel. So in order to get a sterling from that combination, you'd have to actually take the sterling het axanthic and breed it to an axanthic pastel, and then you could possibly either get a sterling or an axanthic, or you could possibly get a sterling axanthic. And let me tell you, it could be pretty problematic trying to figure out exactly which one you have, especially if they all looked really similar to an axanthic. And a lot of these that are really similar, you know, usually I stay away from combinations like that because it can really take a trained eye and years of experience to really figure it out. So if you actually produced an axanthic looking snake from that, essentially what you'd have to do is you'd have to grow it up and then breed it to something else to figure out what it was. And then after you did it for a few years, you'd kind of get the idea of which one is which. You can actually look at the colors and the patterns and the head stamps. And let me tell you, some of these guys that have been breeding the same combinations for years and years, like 10 or 20 years, some of these guys are experts and they can pick out the differences because they've been through all the trial and error and proving everything out and looking at all the fine details to figure out what the genes are in a lot of these combinations, which, you know, sometimes I can actually go over to morphmarket.com and I see some snakes listed with like 5 or 6 or 7 genes, and people are just listing all the genes over there, and it's pretty amazing. Some of these guys have been breeding for so long they can pick out all the individual genes because they've experimented with it and proved out a lot of these combinations and figured it all out. It's pretty amazing. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.